killing of Mrs. Omobolanle Rahim, a female lawyer in Lagos, by a police officer who, according to the NBA, has been in the force for 33 years, raises a lot of questions about policing, police SOP, among other things. Let's take a look at some of these things and how do we even begin conversations such as this, with the history not too long ago of what happened in 2020 with the NSAS campaigns and all. Well, two gentlemen join us this morning to have this conversation with us. GT Ogunye is a legal practitioner. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for inviting me. It's my pleasure. As well as Wilson Inoligo, who is a former Assistant Inspector General of Police in, he joins us from our Abuja studio. Thanks so much for joining us this morning, Mr. Inoligo.
Well, it's a pleasure for me to be here. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Ogunye, it's definitely not something we want to talk about at such a time when we are all talking about joy. But you want to first of all give us an understanding of how this came across to you.
It was a sad development, which ought not to have happened, but it happened. And so first and foremost, we must commiserate with the grieving family for this unfortunate incident. You know, reflecting on that death now, symbolically the day Mary put to bed, and I'm talking about Mary, the mother of Jesus Christ, was the day she was felled by a fatally fired police bullet from the gun of a cop from hell. And given all that we've read in the newspapers now, it ought not to have happened. Let's say up front that police men in our metropolis, particularly in Lagos, have become ubiquitous. Every corner, everywhere you go, you must see them on patrol or on stop and search operations, not mounting roadblocks, but stationing themselves and their vehicles and searching vehicles. And we've had some harvest of criminals through that process. So we can't, at this point, say that such searches are not necessary. As a matter of fact, I've seen some footages of citizens calling on government and asking where the police were when they were in distress, particularly along that AIG axis. In the evenings, when there's traffic snarl or traffic holdups, these louts and urchins and criminals smash windows and, you know, steal from motorists, steal from commuters, seizing their phones and all that. And on such occasions, people have been wondering where are the policemen. And you can imagine that if the police were to intervene on those occasions, and they've intervened on a few occasions, they can fire shots into the air. They can aim to disable fleeing scoundrels. And in the process, you know, things like this could happen. But on this occasion, given all the reports we've read, and that's why I believe that police force immediately took in the suspect and the members of his team. And suspect is not, from what we've read, a young officer, 33 years in service, 2 years to retirement, assistant superintendent of police. He's an officer. And so when things like this occur, you need to ask some questions. You should profile this police officer. Do you have such incident before? Are there incidents of drunkenness on duty? I mean, what could have caused this kind of thing? Of course, it's still a suspect in the eye of the law, and we're not supposed to engage in open trial. This is horrendous. It's horrendous, and the circumstances do not portray the police in good light.
Well,
at all.
there's a lot to unearth, so to speak, even on this program this morning. But let's have the opening comments of Mr. Ineligu as well. Well, this is one too many. In fact, there are those who would reference that this is the second within a month, this same month of December, in this city of Lagos. So one wonders if it is something that the police foresaw, or what would be your take?
Well, I think it's most unfortunate and saddening that this had to happen on such a day, particularly, or any time at all. And I think the police management is very disturbed and also saddened, because what else can you do? You try to give training to your personnel, and they go out there against all laid down regulations and instructions. They behave to the contrary and bring the Nigeria Police Force to public embarrassment or opprobrium. So I think, more than this, every police officer, and especially of the rank of an Assistant Superintendent of Police, should know under what circumstances he can use his weapon and how to secure. He should have the necessary skill to secure his weapon. Is it possible he cocked and he didn't apply the safety pin? What really went wrong? Because when I read the news that he approached the vehicle from the passenger side, the front passenger side, where the wife of this, the woman was seated, and then he discharged his ammunition and killed that woman. So, first of all, I think the issue of training and retraining, building capacity to ensure high performance with particular reference to respect to human rights, dealing with emotional issues, because if an officer is not able to control or manage his emotion and or to act before he thinks about it, raise serious issues. But I think in approaching this, yes, you can take disciplinary action, you can prosecute, but going forward, how do you prevent this? How, right from the police academy and police training institutions, in dealing with, in assessing the emotion of officers, how are you able to, in terms of recruitment process, how are you able to deal with this? How are you able to instruct officers? And what of the supervision? When they go around and they observe the conduct of officers, what actions are immediately taken? Because in a situation like this, we expect officers to exercise precaution. Is it necessary to use your weapon? Is it lawful or legal for you to use your weapon? And that is why when IG Adamu Mohammed, and then with the launch, the Red Cross, the International Committee of Red Cross, decided to review the police order force 237 to be able to see, look, when you have lethal weapon in the hand of officers, do we use stun guns, tasers, so that at the first approach, you don't discharge or you don't use lethal weapon, and you reduce the amount of lethal weapon on our streets. And officers are instructed, that vehicle that has escaped from you, is there nothing else you can do? If you discharge your weapon, is it likely to ricochet? Is it likely to meet the target? Do you have the required skill to be able to take out a vehicle by firing at the tire? So that in using your weapon, all this should be taken into consideration. And so self-management becomes very important for the officers. And that's talking about emotional intelligence, which every officer at this policing in the 21st century in a democracy should be properly trained. So I think it's part of the reform process. It's part of the capacity building.
One quick one, which is something that we have been talking
yes.
about for a while, but one just wonders why this will happen in the same division within 2 weeks. There are those who, of course, who will reference that a certain Gafaro Brahima was also killed in the same division by another officer. Whether or not it's this same fellow, one wonders. But in 2 weeks, 2 murders, one wonders. Is it a question of SOP, or is it something that's been going on and no one had been paying attention, especially from the police authorities, whether in Lagos or in Abuja?
Well, the Nigeria Police Force has standard operating procedures. And when in the use of weapon, you talk about is there immediate danger to your life? And there is no other way, or to a member of the public, that you can prevent such a person from death. And is it unavoidable that if you don't use weapon, that person you are protecting or yourself face immediate danger? In this case, it doesn't happen. But therefore, what I think, in my opinion, is as you give instruction, you supervise, you take punitive step to be able to deal with this situation and prevent them from occurring. Now, when they go out there, because...
The question is, what went wrong such that in 2 weeks, 2 deaths from officers of the law of Nigerians have occurred? Even if it was something that would have happened, it should have gone through some process of law of sorts. So that's why I mean, you've spoken about the, police standard operating procedure. All of that is understood. But to happen twice in 2 weeks from the same division.
And Ayo, just to add to that, just sometime in the middle of the year, there was also a murder of that, sound engineer in Lekki, from Lekki as well. And this division is in Lekki.
So, Mr. Nelegu, you may want to speak to this.
Yeah, first of all, the police has to prevention, the preservation of law and order. Therefore, officers will not be sent out to go and kill law-abiding citizens. These things happen, and they are most unfortunate. But it is not that division, they lack supervision or otherwise. But when officers go out, you go and visit them. As soon as you turn your back, they engage in behaviors that are unprofessional. So it's unfortunate, it's coincidental, and it's unfortunate that it happened. But I think it's not the policy of the police or even that division to go to officers. And I think you've got to be in the mind of the DPU, the Commissioner of Police and the IG. And the IG will not be sitting comfortable, or even the CP, once there is a death that occurs in such an avoidable circumstance. So I don't want us to say that that division has no history of good management, but it's unfortunate that these officers, against all ethics, against all regulation, have gone out to bring embarrassment and sadness to this family. So it's unfortunate, but it calls that there should be more supervisory management in place, and there should be a kind of monitoring and evaluation of the performance of our personnel at the various stop and search points on their patrols. Officers from the AIG, from the Commissioner of Police, should be on the field to begin to monitor the conduct of these officers in the way they conduct their business, in the way they conduct stop and search, in the way they approach the public, and give this assessment and take action against officers even before it occurs. So I don't want the public to believe that it is a policy or the Nigeria police does not supervise our officers. They do, but when some of these officers go, but there is a need for in placing a monitoring and evaluation so that you begin to monitor the officers, and the AIGs are not doing so much. So in their offices, they should be sent out there. The commissioner of police, they should be sent out there. And when you find officers, because it is a disciplinary offense to drink while you're on duty, therefore, you monitor these officers even before it happens. And they must be told that you cannot, in a built-up area, because I think there is a dictum in law that it is far better to allow 10 guilty persons to go scot-free than for one innocent person to suffer or one innocent person to be killed.
Mr. Nalegu, you've touched on a very sore point. That's the conduct of officers while on duty. I'm sure Nigerians will be interested in that. I'd like to pursue that, but that to be, shortly. Let me come to you, Barrister Ogunyi. As a result of this sad incident, Nigerians are embarking on that self-education when, an event like as this occurs, which is whenever you are in an encounter with a police officer, you don't argue. You simply comply with whatever it is that officer is demanding or asking of you. If you must accompany them to the police station, do so, and then make your complaints, present your evidence later if you have been wrongly accused or wrongly fined. But then again, what that suggests is that if they have been wrongly accused or wrongly fined, their rights, their fundamental human rights, would have been tampered with, so to speak. What does this say about our democratic experience if this is the point we have gotten to in our interaction with law enforcement agents who are supposed to, protect us?
The law provides consequences for resisting arrest. But even at that, the law does not expect that on the ground of resisting arrest alone, the person resisting arrest must be killed. The right to life is so sacrosanct, and death is so final and not remediable to such an extent that once death comes, that's the end. Every other thing becomes post-mortem, so to speak. I'm just speaking metaphorically. And so, yes, it could be wise to admonish Nigeria not to argue with police officers. In fact, a former police commissioner who rose to become an inspector general of police, in an interaction with lawyers many, many years back, had advised that, look, you lawyers, if you encounter my men on the road and they argue with you and they threaten to fire you, comply. If they ask you to jump into the body of water, do so. But ensure you pick their number, because that policeman could be drunk. And that he is the commissioner. If he's in the mufti and is so ordered by errant policemen, he will so comply just to protect his life. Yes, we can admonish the citizens not to argue with policemen when they are on duty. The question that we must ask is, what citizens do we want to raise? Dumbasses, pardon my French, people who cannot argue, cannot talk. I'm not saying that citizens should engage the policemen in fisticuffs and beat them up. But even when that has happened, we're not told that such persons are killed. Again, I give an example. Along that axis, many months back, Nigerians forget and Lagosians may forget. There were two chaps, two men, wrestling with two policemen and trying to seize their guns. The video went viral. On that occasion, those persons were apprehended. The policemen didn't fire in broad daylight. And they did it so audaciously. And I was alarmed, even as a lawyer. What are these people thinking? Or did they think that in the post-NSAS era, Nigerians have the liberty to engage policemen and wrestle guns with them and try to harm them while they're on duty? Okay, so we've seen that happen. But I'm saying that on this occasion, an argument didn't even ensue. There was no altercation. It was so unwarranted that you had this. And yet, the retired police officer in Abuja has spoken eloquently about how this should start from the police academy and so on and so forth, training, how they should handle weapons, and continuous training in the exercise. Yes, I agree with him because, you know, in some respect, you have to look at that. How many months did they spend in the police academy? And when they spend these months in the police academy, how did they train them on handling of weapons? These weapons they are handling, they are Kalashnikovs, semi-automatic weapons, automatic weapons, and all that. And when they fired, even the person firing it is shaking. So if you don't handle the gun very well and aim properly, for example, if a car is fleeing and you want to disable the car, you want to shoot at the tire, you must aim at the tire and shoot at the tire if you have to. Not fire blank and fire at a moving object that is occupied with human beings and then claim that I didn't expect disaster to occur. Disaster will occur. Well, so the point is that...
Yeah. We'll come to some of these because you touched on something, and I think it's something that needs to be expatiated a little further, both from your end and from Mr. Enolegu's end, which is in the wake of the NSAS. It's just 2 years gone past the NSAS experience. It's just 2 years and is it 2 or 3 months gone past it? And this is what we have on our hands. No, just 2 years and 2 months gone past it. And this is what we have on our hands. What happens in 5 years and 10 years from now?
Okay.
Are we going to get back to the same situation? We'll talk about that and more when we return from this break. Please stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. We're still talking about the unfortunate killing of Bolanle Rahim by a policeman. And 2 gentlemen are still with us. Well, Mr. Ogunye, what we close with, of course, Mr. Enolegbu, you'd also weigh in on the issue. It's just 2 years and 2 months shy of the NSAS protests, which in itself, conversations around it started around 2015 or thereabout, talking about police brutality, harassment of innocent citizens and all of that. And the NSAS was mostly about treating policemen better. That was the subject matter, that government should pay more attention to policemen to ensure that they get their dues and all of those things. And SARS. Now, SARS has ended, and the killing of Mrs. Omobolanle Rahim is perhaps just one of several. Do you think, as a country, we have taken in any lesson and applied it from the NSAS, movement, protests, whatever we want to call it?
From my observation, I don't think so. And that's unfortunate and sad. My immediate response to the question or your line of discourse before we went on break is that, yes, SARS have been disbanded, but the police force has not been disbanded. Those who constituted SARS essentially were policemen. And so, although the officer from Abuja has tried to manage a difficult situation by not suggesting that the Ajiwe police station could be profiled for bad behavior and bad conduct, there's no escaping, thinking like that. So why should policemen in a particular location be notorious for killing people? Okay? And so, if what we've had therefore is a dispersal of the murderous element in SARS, in the larger police force, that means this problem is not going to go away. So, I say that we've not learned our lessons, and it's very sad. People have been perennially and perpetually calling for police reforms. So, you expect that if reforms are carried out, there will be some measurable, perceptible, discernible turnaround, that there's an improvement. Can Nigerians say that Nigerians that encounter policemen every day, can the police authority do a poll Do they do a poll?
Okay.
Do they conduct surveys to find out what the people think about them on a continuous basis for them to have some kind of feedback, even after NSAS? Have they been doing this? So we can see the impact of the reforms that they talked about every time. We can see the reforms are not just only in terms of uniforms, cosmetic reforms. We're talking about head-shaking fundamental reforms that will ensure that things like this don't occur, because they occur every time.
Speaking of reforms, I'd like to now bring it to Mr. Inaligu, who talked about training. And I believe that you also wanted to err on the side of caution when you assured us that police would not deliberately deploy officers who are not in the right frame of mind. But then again, if this is some form of feedback for you, we see police officers who would rather go after the big vehicles that can pay a fine, or perhaps, you know, pay a bribe. We see police officers who refrain from, you know, volatile situations just to save themselves, you know, from harm's way. We see so many other things related. So what kind of training then are they receiving besides, you know, the lack of training that we evidently see in weapons handling? So if this is what we see in their response, you know, to maintenance of law and order, then it begs the question.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Inaligu.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I want to disabuse the mind of the public that you cannot, at the checkpoint or when officers are on patrol, engage with the police by asking questions. So they are not the enemies of the community. Rather, the police is very desirous of good relationship with the public that will translate to better crime management, to better performance of their duty. Unfortunately, however, when officers like this ASP behave, all the good intentions, all the good job of the force is forgotten because of these kind of officers. So it's most unfortunate. And I want to say, in terms of reform, I think it should go deeper down, especially in terms of funding for training institutions. And then taking the issue of community policing holistically, that every officer get to understand that they alone cannot manage the issue of crime, but it must be together with the community. And you cannot be together with the community when you don't respect their basic rights. And the first being the right to life, which unfortunately has been violated here. But in terms of training, and which goes from reform, now, we have a lot of reform committees have been set up. But I think, in my opinion, a lot needs to be done. What is the funding of training institutions like? Who are the officers that are deployed to training institutions? Are they sent to training institutions based on merit, based on capacity, or as punishment? So we must take the issue of training very seriously, that with the kind of officers we deploy to our training institutions must be the best. And getting the best training institutions, you've got to in place some welfare for them so that they receive that motivation and they don't hurry to. So if you take me to training institutions, it becomes punishment. So let us look at our training institutions and give modern training that is suitable for the 21st century. And I did, in my opening remarks, I talked about emotional intelligence and also social intelligence, which is the officers who are on duty get to understand the emotion of the people they are dealing with. And in understanding that emotion, they are able to address their concerns. And in addressing those concerns, it takes you to the realm of community policing, and that the community and the police coming together to adopt common problem-solving approach. So, and then they become the friends of the community. So you can go to the checkpoint and you can ask the officer, why are you searching me?
Yeah, that is quite a trip that we have to
just
take.
A moment.
And there are those who believe that this trip started as far back as 2015, when the build-up to the NSAS things came up. So the question, just this one, and then if you can answer it in 30 seconds, because we have run out of time. Well, you heard Mr. Ogunye's response to the question of whether or not we have taken on board significant lessons from the NSAS movement, which was predominantly about taking care of the police and doing some of these things that you suggested.
Well, I think lessons have been learned, and those lessons, I think police welfare salary has been increased, even those of retired officers, but I think there is more. There are several areas of improvement.
This was significant enough to deter the kind of things that has happened?
Of course.
You think the welfare of the policemen, you think the welfare of policemen is sufficient to take care of the things that they have to go through in their personal lives and protect Nigerians accordingly?
Several rooms. There's much room for improvement.
Okay. Well, Mr. Wilson Onolegu, former Assistant Inspector General of Police, thank you so much for your time this morning, as well as Mr. G.T. Ogunye, a legal practitioner. Thank you so much. Truly appreciate your time.
Thanks.
We're back after now. Please stay with us.